Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
My biggest expense as a rental property investor is when a tenant leaves, when I have to turn over a unit. It's always going to cost me money. There's always going to be something I need to fix or replace. I'm probably going to have some vacancy between tenants, and I'm going to have to pay a commission. In my case, I use a property manager, and they're going to charge me a commission to place a new tenant in there. So one of my goals for this year is to try to get my tenants to stay a little bit longer. And I figure if I can get another year or maybe 2 years out of them, it'll make a really big difference to my bottom line. So on the podcast today, I wanted to bring on an expert at keeping long-term tenants. Her average tenant stays with her for 8 years, and her longest tenant has been with her for 21 years. I mean, imagine that, a tenant staying for 21 years. How many times have they bought that property for you if they stay there for 21 years? So on the show today, we're going to walk through her entire process, figure out exactly what she's doing with her rentals and exactly what makes her so profitable. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll meet our guest. Our guest today wants to remain anonymous, so we're not going to be using her name or say where she's from, but she's got some great information. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come right back and we'll get into it. When I'm doing research to buy a new rental property, there's a lot of different websites, apps, and then a spreadsheet that I use to do my analysis. It's really kind of a convoluted process. Well, there's a much easier way. There's an app called Ask Rick. That's RIC for Rental Income Calculator. Ask Rick makes it really easy to find and analyze rental properties. You can see all the properties for sale in an area. If something looks good, you can press one button. It'll analyze the property for you. It'll figure out the rent amount. It'll figure out your mortgage payment, all your expenses, and give you your cash flow. If you're ready to move forward, you can make an offer right there on the app, or you can send the information over to your realtor to do some more investigation into the property. You can try it out for free right now. Just search for Ask Rick. That's RIC, Ask Rick in the App Store, or go to justaskrick.com. That's justaskrick.com. The first step in buying a rental property is to get pre-qualified, and I would suggest you work with a lender that specializes in working with investors, because the last thing you want to have happen is to get to closing and find out the money's not there and you can't close. The lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and she'll pre-qualify you for free if you mention Rental Income Podcast. Find out more today. Contact Chaley at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056. I want to see if I can figure out what you're doing to attract such great long-term tenants. Why do you think it is? Like, why do you think tenants just don't leave you?
I am so super picky.
Okay.
To a fault sometimes, probably, that it takes me a ton of time to pick who I want to rent the place to. So it's, a series of different things that I look at, some of them quantifiable and some of them not. But I want to know that they really want to live in that location. There's got to be some specific reason that keeps them there. In that location, and that would be family. How many family members do they have nearby? One of the first things I write down on my checklist is I figure out how far away from their work location is this rental property. Okay. And this last one we just put in, she could walk. She told me that when she called me. She goes, "I can walk there."
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to dive into this and figure out exactly what you're doing, but let's start with the types of rentals that you own. Like, can you describe what the neighborhoods are like and what the properties are like?
Yeah, mostly duplexes and smaller size single family homes. So definitely bread and butter type blue collar neighborhoods. Nothing luxurious at all.
Okay.
So it's we've got just a lot of blue collar is best way to describe it.
So would you say it's like a B type neighborhood, B type properties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start at the beginning. So when you're pricing your rental, How do you price it? Like, are you, as landlords, we want to try to get the maximum amount of money. Are you pricing your rentals as high as you possibly can, or are you coming in a little bit low?
Well, we've done both, and my husband and I run the business together, and we'll both come up with a list every year when we're doing renewals, but also when we're reevaluating a new opportunity to put a new resident in there. And I'll look at the competition first of all. What else is listed? And usually there's so much demand in our area that there's not a lot listed, but we definitely look at the interior pictures of the other places and kind of compare to the level of rehab that we have in ours. And lately we've been kind of pushing it to see, can we inch it up a little bit in rent?
Okay.
And we've been able to get that.
Okay, good.
Pretty easily, because we see over time, we tend to be, although we're very, business oriented each year in increasing rents when it's necessary, when it makes sense to do so. But at the same time, we find for the tenants we like, and I shouldn't say this on camera. I shouldn't say this, but the people that have been cooperative, that are easy to deal with, that don't call us about little things, we definitely don't want them to move.
Right.
So we're less likely to increase their rent because they're so great.
Okay.
They can take care of things on their own. But it's really looking at the competition, what else is around there, what else is available, looking at the pictures, comparing ours to that. But one clear thing to look at is when you go ahead and put an ad out, and if you're not getting calls, it's probably priced too high.
Right. Okay. So if you're not getting calls, are you adjusting the price pretty quickly?
You know what? I can't even think of a time when we had to do that.
Okay, so you're really, you just know the prices.
Yeah.
You're right on.
Yeah, we just have so many, and it's been this way for a while. So many inquiries because there's just not enough available in that price range. Right now it's around 1,000, 1,100 a month for a 2-bedroom. There's just not enough available out there. They go too quickly, and the people know it now. The people know it because they're not getting calls back because there's just so many inquiries. They're just not getting called back.
So what are you doing for advertising? Where do you post your listings?
Yes. Right now, I've only had to use Facebook Marketplace in this past two runarounds because I just got so many inquiries. And that was new for me. I was hearing from other landlords that they were having success with it, and I had never tried it. I'm not a big Facebook user. So I went and posted it. And what I really liked a lot was that once they inquire, I can click and see their profile.
Oh, okay.
Very fast.
Yep. So you can get
it gives me I can see, okay, the stuff that I don't like to see, which is on most of them, I can kind of just see their activity. And actually I denied somebody a few years ago because of his son's Facebook page.
Really? What did you see on there?
The guy was great. He worked for a bank. He had a little bit of issues with his credit, but something I could work with. And when he wrote on our application, it says, who else might live with you, even if it's for a short period of time? And he wrote his son. And so I looked up his sons, and his son was right at 18, just about to turn 18. And when I found the son's Facebook page and all the drug activity and language, and I was like, you know what? This is what we just kicked out of that place.
Right.
We don't want that.
Yep.
So I found, a reason to deny him that did not mean I didn't have to tell him that the father that I was denying because of the son.
Right.
Because that was another reason I could use, but Facebook saved me on that one.
So
it has on many others.
It sounds like pre-screening is really important. So is there any other pre-screening anything you ask them before you show them the property just to see if they're going to be a good fit for you?
Oh yeah. They basically don't get to see it until I know I'm going to accept them.
Oh, okay.
I don't say that to them, but I don't want to waste their time or my time. And I'm not going physically to show it to them anyway. Many times it's actually the current resident that's about to move out that is actually showing it to them. So it's another reason why I'm keeping the the flow to a minimum in terms of the number of people going in to the property. But if it was a vacant property, then we do have a lockbox on it. I get their driver's license. I've researched them a bit before. I would give the code to them, and then if I feel weird about them, we'll change the code right after they see it.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I don't want to waste a lot of time. So I am asking them, making sure that they make at least 3 times the rent in terms of their gross income. Like, what does your W-2 say? What does your pay stub say? If they're kind of iffy, I was like, well, send it to me. We can decide right now. I'll help you figure it out.
Right. Okay.
Is there any other income that isn't part of your pay stub? That kind of thing.
Do you ever get any pushback? Anyone that's like, hey, listen, I just want to see the property. I don't want to go tell you my whole life story right now. Do you ever get that from anybody?
I haven't in a long time. Mainly, I have the excuse now of saying I have, and I put this in the ad, that I have so many people inquiring. You need to answer these questions in order to see the unit.
Okay.
And they usually don't. Once they start, and I'm not really talking to them yet. I'm really doing the Facebook messaging up front and just sending them, okay, do you have the W-2s that prove this? Do you have 2 years of rental history? Would your past landlord say that you always paid your rent on time?
It's a good one.
And then I'll get the responses where, oh, I've never rented before. I have no rental history. So a lot of them say that. And a lot of them don't even know that in order to afford a place that they need to earn 3 times the rent. They think that they just want to get out of mom and dad's house.
Now,
they want to move in with their boyfriend for the first time, that kind of thing. At
this stage, are you also looking to see if this is somebody that might be there long term? Are you asking them like flat out, hey, how long do you plan on staying here?
Not initially, because I'm really trying to cover the other stuff first to, weed them out. But definitely one of the first things I'm asking is, do you already live there? How far away? I kind of frame it in a way like in terms of going to see the property. Oh, how far away are you?
Okay. Right.
And if they say, oh, I'm thinking of moving from Ohio, then I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
we're trying to fill this unit next week. So
right.
that means they don't know the area, but we have had some people that are moving back. So then it's a matter of, I ask them, hey, what makes you want to choose this location? Do you have family nearby? Do you work nearby? And they're usually okay with answering those kind of questions. So that's helping me decide, okay, they're coming to the top of my list in terms of choosing them to go see the property.
All right. So you've got a really good feel for the tenant before they've actually seen the property. You think, I'm probably going to rent to this person. When you actually give them the application, is there anything on the application that you're looking for that you haven't already gotten in your pre-screening?
Yeah, one of the first questions is, how long would you expect to live here?
Okay.
So right at the top, 1 year.
Right at the top. That's the first thing you're asking
1
them.
year, 1 to 3 years, or more than 3 years.
Okay,
so that's a big clue.
If somebody says, I think we're going to be buying a house next year, I'm just looking to rent for a year, would you pass on that person?
I would say this probably isn't the best location for you because we're looking for somebody that wants to live here long term.
Okay. So you're really setting the expectation that you want them to be there for a long time, and you're basically telling them that as they're applying for the property?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Because just the way we've designed the rental agreement, I just tell them it's best for you and us in terms of what you're going to be signing for you to stay here long term.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the right property for you if you're not planning on being here long term. Now, on the flip side of that, there are lots of people that say they want to buy a house, and we know,
not
that,
everyone,
they think they can improve their credit by 400 points in 6 months, and we know it's not going to happen. But the type of person that aspires to own a house and take good care of a property so that they get a good review from us as their prior property manager, in terms of their credit would be good for them. So we talk to them a lot about that too. And I say to them, another thing I say to them up front is I say, to help them behave while they're our residents, is we have helped our residents buy a house in the past. It's not our business model to do that for everybody. We want them to stay there as a renter, but we've helped them buy them at an auction. We've helped finance them.
Okay.
So certainly if you're ever thinking of buying a house down the road, call us because we have a lot of resources that
Right.
can help you get a good deal. And that way they know to let us know if they're thinking about it down the road too.
Right. Okay. Now, what about when you're actually looking at their background? Like, are you like really checking out their prior landlord references? Are you looking into their credit score? Like, how carefully are you diving in? Because you've already done a really good pre-screen. Everything on the application probably makes sense. Are you going even deeper before you rent to them?
Yeah, absolutely. With the prior landlords, that to me is like the number one thing. I can't even believe I haven't said anything about it yet on this call. Yeah, and looking in every way possible for how they might be lying about who their past landlords were
Mhm.
and where their past addresses are. I mean, they're giving us a lot of clues when they're applying. They've got their driver's license, they've got what they put on the application, they got their W-2s, they got their pay stubs. I've had people, well, all four addresses on all of those were all different. And they
Yep.
forget about that if they're trying to get one over on you.
Okay,
You
so
know.
you've gone really, really deep into their background. So say you have an applicant and they've passed everything. They seem perfect. They want to stay there forever. They work nearby. They've got connections in the neighborhood. But what if they maybe don't have the security deposit? Will you work with them on the security deposit, or are you really firm? You need to have the first month's rent and the security deposit to move in.
Yeah, I won't let them get in with less than 2 months rent, usually. But I have had people with other collateral that I liked. One gentleman called, and the first thing he said was, I don't have all the security deposit, but I do own a condo that's free and clear, no mortgage. And I said immediately, I can work with that.
So
And I got a lien on his condo. And I said,
wow.
anytime you come up with the other $865 that we needed for you to move in, just tell me and I'll release this lien.
Now, did that seem a little bit odd that someone has a paid off condo that they're letting you put a lien on for $865? Like, did that set off any alarms?
um, it protected me more.
Yeah,
Obviously,
right.
by having that, right?
I mean, there's no risk there.
But I asked him the questions. I said, well, why would you want to live there? And he's like, well, I bought it last year. I did want to live in it, but I moved jobs, and this is more convenient. The location he was looking at of ours, and it made everything he said made sense. And he had done a lot of work to pick the right condo to buy, and I mean he was very analytical, and I found that out over researching him. So it was a good deal overall,
Mhm.
to protect us. And then he did, if he was going to sell the property or refinance it, then I would have had to be paid off. So that protected me.
All right, so everything checks out. Say, someone's made it through your really strict screening criteria. They're ready to move in. Do you have them sign a multi-year lease once you've got them, or are you doing a 1-year lease?
Mostly it's 1 year, but based on the time of year, it depends. Sometimes we go, a 16, 18 month, because we always have our leases end the end of December.
End of
Coming
December.
so coming up now, we'll talk to them about making it longer than that, so that it always ends the end of December, as long as we want it to be more than a 6-month lease also.
Now, that seems like a bad time to be trying to rent the property out. Like, wouldn't it be better to have it end in like April than December?
Maybe.
Well, why do you do December?
When my husband and I started doing this, we just picked the month that they lived, that they moved in. And then his idea was that, well, let's do all our renewals at the same time, and let's do it at a time of year that most people don't want to move,
Okay.
so that they'll sign in with us another year, but and be unlikely to move because of the time of the year. He thought they would stay longer because of that. And yeah, there have been very rarely times where we've had a few, vacant around that time. But you know what? I think there was only that one guy that really moved out Christmas week. and he really moved into one of our other properties, so it really didn't affect us that
Right.
much. Otherwise, what we do is we say, okay, well, hey, let's work together to get another resident in there as quickly as possible. So maybe you can move, December 5th instead of moving during Christmas. Let's work together to make that happen. Or how about, would February 1st work better for you? When they know they're leaving, but they don't necessarily need to leave a specific date. Let's say we'll work with them to make it easier so we're avoiding Christmas week. But overall, I think, it's really, it's been nice to have them all end at the same time, and we haven't really been negatively affected by that at all.
That's a really interesting, because I just wonder if there's a lot of people that renew because they just don't want to move. Like everyone has a lot of stuff going on around the holidays and they just don't want to move. Like, do you think you maybe get renewals? You maybe get an extra year here and there just because it's easier to renew than it is to move?
Yes. Yeah, because nobody wants to move that time. And then also finding another place to move too.
Right.
Is probably harder for them as well. So they're less likely to leave then. But that gets them to commit to that next year. And then because they've done that, then we have a greater ability to get them. We call it we've gone to some classes through David Tilney on giving them a performance bonus when they leave. And so if they're leaving in the middle of a lease, then we have a reason for them to perform better, to help us to fill that unit as quickly as possible after they leave.
So tell me more about that. So you give them a bonus?
Yes, and this is when they know about this up front. On the rental agreement up front, we tell them, hey, if for any reason you needed to leave inside of a lease, not at the end of the lease, just let us know. Give us 60-day notice, and we want to part friends here, so let's work together and cooperate to fill this as quickly as possible, which relieves you from having to pay rent for the rest of the year, obviously.
Right.
But also we have paid people a bonus because they've been so helpful in showing the unit and helping us get it filled the same day. We've many times had them move out and the new resident move in that same day or the next day because they knew how the system worked and that they were being rewarded for it. And we're very fair in rewarding them.
How much do you generally pay them?
It depends on what their upfront money was that they paid to get in, and how they behaved on the rest of the rental agreement. But we're super, super fair with them on doing that. We just had somebody move out because of coronavirus. They were very upfront. They knew our whole system, that we want the communication, number one. And they told us, they paid April rent. And I think it was April 5th. They told us, we can't handle this. We're, lost. Our jobs were cut back. We can't handle our bills. We have to move back in with our parents. And even though they didn't give us 60 days notice, they got all of their money back that they paid up front, aside from the rent that they paid.
Okay. Now, with coronavirus, that actually brings up something interesting. And I don't know if you've run into this yet, but with tenants showing the property to the potential tenants, like, have you had anybody that maybe hasn't been comfortable with strangers coming into their house and looking around, or has that not come up much?
Yeah, we basically stopped showing, I can't remember what date it was, but we said, okay, we're not going to bring people through. We got videos of the inside, and that, once people know where it is and they've driven by it and they see the video, that's a lot of it. Yeah. But then once we got to the point where I got their deposit, then, I wanted to make sure that they saw the inside, and we arranged for the resident either to not be there or got their agreement that everybody would wear masks and be, to handle it the right way.
Right. All right. And then the last thing I want to ask you about is raising rent. And you kind of alluded to this earlier in the interview, that if someone is a good tenant, you're really not trying to raise their rent. So do you not raise the rent at all if someone pays on time and take care of the property?
We almost always raise it, but sometimes a very little bit, depending on the market. Over 20 years, the market's been up and down. So, there were some, 2008, 2009, where we said, okay, we're not raising them. because they were really going down. We didn't want to lose the residents, but we always increase them pretty much. And they know. We send them a letter saying, hey, it's, the taxes have gone up, the insurance has gone up, maintenance costs go up every year, but we want to work with you to keep it as reasonable as possible. And if somebody, actually, we did have somebody push back a little bit, not very often, because we don't raise it crazy, we don't raise it crazy amounts. But we did have somebody push back on our highest price rental, which was, I don't know, $14.50 at the time. And we just said, hey, we understand, but here are some other rentals in your area and what they rent for. And there were clearly more. And once they saw the why, behind it, that they were getting a deal and that we had expenses that were going up, they were like, oh, thanks. We didn't know that. They were cool about it.
I think that's really good. I think everybody should make note of that, because that's really good that you're not just saying, I need to raise rent because I'm the rich landlord and I want more of your money. You're really justifying that, look, our costs are going up and your taxes are going up every year and your insurance is probably going up a little bit. So you really need to raise rent just to kind of keep up with inflation. I think that's really smart.
Yes. And that helped, I think, with what's going on with coronavirus now, because I think a lot of us landlords panicked saying, what, a moratorium on evictions? What? And because they knew already the insurance has to be paid, the property taxes need to be paid, there are repairs involved, they knew that those costs had to be paid and that we would all lose if they don't get paid.
I love it. Well, if this interview inspired you and you're ready to buy your first property or you want to add to your portfolio, the lender that I recommend is Chaley Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender and she specializes in helping investors buy rental properties. She has a ton of different loan programs and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or set up a time to talk to Chaley, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. If you mention Rental Income Podcast, she will waive all the pre-qualification fees. NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We have new interviews every single Tuesday. And if you subscribe, you'll get notified as soon as they come out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.